Shalom, everyone. I hope all is going well for you today. Welcome back to the Midrash channel. Today, we will continue with our series of reading through the Tehillim, or the Psalms. Today, we'll be reading Psalm 33 and 34. We'll read these two Psalms. I'm only doing two today, as I did yesterday, I believe, simply because of the length of these Psalms. And I think that there's a lot of meat on these bones. And anything I say, anything I read here is only, I consider everything that's ever been said to me as a jump off point. From there, I strongly suggest that you do your own studies, that you further your own understanding of these things, because at the end of the day, it is your understanding of how the scriptures work and how you can apply them to your lives as based on what the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, will teach you. It's important we all become our own Talmudim. A Talmudim is a Hebrew word for student. We all must become students of the word so that we may grow wisely in the Most High Yah, and not just simply take what a moreh or a pastor or any person says as being 100% true, because even with man's best efforts, man can be wrong, or at the very least give you incomplete information. It doesn't give you everything you specifically need. That is why any good teacher will always lead you back to studying the word for yourself. So let's begin. Let's read Tehillim 33 and 34. We start at verse 1 for Tehillim 33. Shout for joy in Yahweh, you righteous. Praise is fitting for the straight. Praise Yahweh with the lyre. That's an instrument, not a person who tells falsehoods. Sing to him with an instrument of 10 strings. Sing to him a new song. Play sweetly with a shout of joy. For the word of Yahweh is straight, and all his works are in truth. Loving righteousness and right ruling. The earth is filled with love and commitment of Yahweh. By the word of Yahweh, the heavens were made, and all their hosts by the spirit of his mouth. Gathering the waters of the sea together as a heap, laying up the deep in storehouses. Let the earth fear Yahweh. Let all the inhabitants of the earth stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it came to be. He commanded, and it stood fast. Yahweh brings the counsel of the nations to naught. He thwarts the plans of the peoples. The counsel of Yahweh stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. Blessed is the nation whose Elohim is Yahweh, the people whom he has chosen as his own inheritance. Yahweh has looked from the heavens, and he has seen all the sons of men. He looked upon them from his dwelling place on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all, he who understands all their works. The sovereign is not saved by the multitude of an army. A mighty man is not delivered by great strength. A horse is a vain means of safety, neither does it rescue any by its great power. See, the eye of Yahweh is on those fearing him, on those waiting on his loving commitment, to deliver their being from death, and to keep them alive during the scarcity of food. Our being has longed for Yahweh, our help and our shield is he. For our heart does rejoice in him, for we have put our trust in his set apart name. Let your loving commitment, O Yahweh, be upon us, even as we wait for you. I really like the Tehillim because it is an exhortation to following the Most High. It is teaching you. It is a proclamation of his goodness. In the other Psalms, you may have noticed that there were points, and we'll probably see them again, where the writer was talking about a distress or a place they were in and how they needed a deliverance. Well, in this one, you see more of an upbeat tone. You see where growth, where development is taking place, where a change in prose, if you will, has come forth. We see even starting at verse 5, we see he begins to explain his Elohim. Elohim, it means several things, but essentially means power. So when the word Elohim was used in the ancient times of the Hebrew people and the people in the Levant region, Elohim was a generic term, believe it or not, because there were different Elohims, different powers that people ascribed to, people believed in. They may have believed in Baal, or they may be in Chemosh or whatever. And when he calls himself the Most High Yah, they understand who he is because he sits at the top of the food chain. And even the Yahweh of the Bible was known by other groups of people in that area. They knew who he was, even though they may not necessarily served him. They knew who he was, and they knew who his people were. So in this case, the writer is explaining who it is that he's tied to, who it is that he serves. He describes the power of his creator when he's saying that the earth is filled with his loving commitment. Now, we talk loving commitment occurs several times through this psalm. Now, if you want to know what it means, if you want a better understanding of what that means, we talked about that a bit yesterday when we went over through those Tehillim yesterday, because that word is a reoccurring theme. So if you really want to understand what he means by loving commitment, you really need to go understand what it means from a Hebraic point of view. It doesn't just mean he likes you and has warm feelings to you. No, it is much deeper than that. Verse 6, he talks about by his voice, the Shamayim, the heavens were created. Genesis 1, anyone? Think about it. The Bible starts off with with a declarative statement. It says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. Then if we even go farther in the next verse, it talks about how it says he created the luminaries. Now the luminaries, and I use the word luminaries there, but it is the word, it means angels, it means the watchers, it means the lesser Elohim and all the dominions and powers that people draw from. Yes, he created everything. All of it was created by him. Let's see, we can even use this. In Isaiah 45:7, he says, I form the light and I create darkness. I make peace and I create evil. I, Yahweh, Yahweh, do all these things. I know that probably goes against some people's sensibilities, but whether it's light or darkness, he created everything. So every power that somebody draws from is subordinate to the creator of all those things. And he ranks as the supreme power. He made the boundaries. It says there, and I think it's with verse 6 or 7, it talks about he made the boundaries of the waters. Now that's speaking of him making that's an example of him making the natural laws, putting things in place, the things we call gravity, the things we call light, dark, heat, cold. He put those things in existence and he put them in boundaries. But in this case, he was talking about the waters. He said he gathered the waters. That, as we know, the water is not flooding the earth, all of the earth. Even though it's said that the earth is 70% water, there are places where the water does not exceed the boundaries. I lived right near the ocean. I lived right near the Gulf Coast. And I can tell you that the water, even though it's immense, it only comes up so far. Sure, there are times where it may overflow that and come up a bit, but it always retreats back to its boundary because he set these things in order. In verse 8, I believe he's telling us to fear. Now, we see that, we look up that word, that's the word Yara, and you can look it up in a lexicon. An easy one for you to look up is the BDP lexicon, not BDP, but BDB, Brown Drivers Briggs. That's usually attached to strong concordance in the Bible, but it's saying fear. It means that let everything stand in awe of him. Let everything see him as the spectacle as he truly is, and that people began to understand who it is that they're dealing with here. How he is the creator, the progenitor of all life. How they began to put him in the place he already exists and not dummy him down to the human understanding or what they want him to be versus who he truly is. Verse 12, we skip down there. I believe he was saying that it is a blessing to be the people who belong to this awesome, all-powerful Elohim. See, he's saying it's not just enough to know who he is. It's about being in his family, being in the clique, the club, being on the gang, the team, that you are united with him. Because it's one thing to know something about somebody, but it's another thing to have a relationship with them. And the Most High Yah is drawing us into having a relationship with him. That is what he desired. When he created man, he didn't create Adam and Kavah to be servants. He created them to be companions, people he could interact with, people he made in his image. And he's looking for us to to reestablish and to regain that image, to reclaim the identity. Yes, I'm talking to Israel, and I'm also talking to all people because he designed one instruction for all men to follow. And as I said yesterday, salvation is not just simply for those who call themselves Israelites, because if we read the Torah, people were able to join as long as they came and joined along with Israel and accepted that place and began to follow Elohim by doing those things that were required to be a part of his kingdom and his community. Yes, there are things that he set aside specifically for his people that he deemed his own, but the ability to walk with him is open to anybody who's willing to submit to the mitzvot, to the instructions, to the Torah, to be saved according to what the Bible says, not according to what somebody else has said. That was never taken off the table. That wasn't something new that was brought with Yahshua. And we look at verses 13 through 17. It says he knows all people because he created them. And he knows the hearts of each and every person. He knows the hearts, the intentionality of every person walking this planet. That's Israelite or not. See, you may be able to fool some people some of the time, but you can fool him none of the time. You can trick me, I can trick you. But him, he sees the heart in the reins of the kidneys or the intentionality of the heart. And he's always examining. And he even uses this example right here. We go farther. He talks about how the king isn't saved, but the king can't be saved by his military or by his authority. When Yahweh wants to get him, Yahweh is the ultimate protection against all things that will come your way. Even in the midst of the situation, I believe it was saying there, what was it saying somewhere around, I believe towards the end of the psalm, it talked about how even at a time of famine and drought, he'll be there for you. See, that's why it's important that we become hedged in with his promises, because in his promises are his protection. Anything outside of that is not guaranteed to you. Sure, there's a difference between mercy and grace. Mercy is given to just anybody just because I'm in a good mood. But grace is something that is based on covenant, and I must act simply because I have a covenant. It's the same as you feeding your children and you maybe buying a Happy Meal for some kid at McDonald's. You know, when you have your children, you're going to do for them, but for somebody else, you might do it. So covenant is based on will do it, which is grace, and mercy is built on might do it, but there's no obligation to do so. Understand this, and I'm gonna wrap this up here with this verse, with this Tehillim. It says that we have to understand that even though he talks about him this way, and he talks about the king, he's always downplaying the role of a king. And this is the reason why. One reason I think it is because Israel was never designed to have a king put in place. Sure, it had priests, it had prophets, it had clan and kahal leaders. A kahal is a community. A clan would be your family, your mishpachah. But an actual ultimate leader who sat on a throne with a gold crown on his head, they were never designed for that. So when we see people like Shaul, the first Saul, the king Saul, and we see David, and we see Solomon, and Rehoboam, and all these other kings who came after that, one thing that I've noticed is that there's a stream about all these men, is that there's always a place where the Most High lets you see the frailty, the faults of these men. And I believe part of it was done to always just stab a little bit, just to make you aware of the fact that his people were never designed to have a king ruling over them. A prophet, yes, a prophet who would speak what the Most High has declared. Well, notice when Moshe was speaking to the people, he was never speaking to them as their king or their ruler, but he was speaking as the mouthpiece of Yahweh. And whenever you see the priests and prophets operating in their place, they're simply a representation of the supreme power. But a king is a dominion, and is a place where they rule and they give you orders and they tell you what they think is right. And the Most High warned them against this. He even said, he was talking about in 1 Samuel, when people start begging for a king from Samuel, saying, we want a king, we want to be like everybody else. And the Most High told them, it's not you they're rejecting, Samuel, it's me. They're rejecting me as king. And he told them what the consequence of having a king would be. They're going to take taxes. They're going to send your kids to war. They're going to do this and that and the other thing. And the people in the blindness of their ways not realize they already had a king in place who was the Most High Yah. They wanted a man. What they got was a big guy, a big coward named Saul, as you may know. And if you know the story of Saul, you know how it ended. David, great guy, but he made a lot of mistakes. But see, that was showing the imperfection in men. And whenever you look up to men to simply be your ruler and your dominator, you will always come up short. Those men will always, the emperor will walk around at some point with his pants off. And it'll be up to you to see what you see or you to deny what you see, to be blind to the things you see. We're all human. We all make mistakes. That's not taking away from anybody who may be in leadership. It's just a simple fact that if you do look up to them as you being your ultimate source, as being your ultimate leader, you're setting yourself up for disaster. So that's what we get there. I'm on a bit of a tangent, but that's what we get there when we read the Tehillim 33. Excuse me, I have a lot of stuff on. This is my work desk, so I have a lot of stuff on it. But let's continue on because I don't want to be all day. Now we'll read Tehillim 34. Now, before I start reading this, I'm just going to preface it with, at the beginning of each verse, you're going to hear me use a word, different words that just seem out of place. And we went through this before, but each of these words are one word or a letter of the Hebrew Aleph Bet. I didn't make a mistake. I didn't mean to say alphabet. It is called the Aleph Bet. And the Aleph Bet has 22 letters in it. And it's in the Paleo Hebrew. So even though I'm reading the names of these letters, but if you look up Paleo Hebrew, you'll find that next to the name or these words I'll use is an object or something that you can actually see. See, it was a pictographic language, kind of like the hieroglyphs. So everything had a stance or a thing. Like the Aleph is the first letter, you'll see like a bull or something of that sort. Then you see the second letter, which is Biet or Bet, which shows a house. And those things are tied to that. But each of those words has a very deep meaning. And if you began to even just read a cursory understanding of the Aleph Bet, it will blow your mind, especially as you read the Bible. Because all this stuff is tied into the culture of Israel. You cannot, you can't really understand the Bible without understanding the history of the people in it. And if you try to do that through, especially out of a Greco-Roman Christian understanding, there will always be gaps in your understanding because you're trying to use one system to describe another that's diametrically opposed to that. In other words, the way the Greeks live is completely different than the way the Hebrews, the Israelites live. And often our understanding, especially I come from the church background, we were given things to a Greco-Roman understanding, and that's a poor translation. I use the same analogy of trying to understand your Android through an Apple or vice versa. Those things aren't compatible. They really don't act well together. So there's going to be mistakes made. But let's read. Tehillim 34. I'm going to read the first letter, Aleph, and then I'll read the verse. And one thing I'll tell you this before I begin is that you study this word, you go back and look at Psalm 34, read each of these letters, then look up what that letter means in alphabet, and you see how it's reflected in the actual stanza, because these are stanzas, because this is a song. It's not really chapters and verses, but you'll see how that stanza, that word is reflected in that stanza. It's amazing. Man, you got to get into this book to understand it. Okay. Tehillim 34, Aleph. It's the first letter. I bless Yahweh at all times. His praise is continually in my mouth. Yahweh is the Father, Aleph. Be it, my being makes his boast in Yahweh. Let the humble hear and be glad. Gimel, oh, make Yahweh great with me, and let us exalt his name together. Dalet, I sought Yahweh, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Hey, They looked to him and were lightened. Why? And their faces were not ashamed. Zion, the poor one cried out, and Yahweh heard him. Hit, no, Zion, yes. He heard him and saved him out of all of his distresses. Hit. The messenger of Yahweh encamps all around those who fear him and rescues them. Tet, oh, taste and see that Yahweh is good. Blessed is the man that takes refuge in him. Yod, fear Yahweh, you his set apart ones, for there is no lack to them who fear him. Kaf, young lions have lacked and been hungry, but those who seek Yahweh lack not any good matter. Lamed, come, you children, listen to me. Let me teach you the fear of Yahweh. Mem, who is the man who desires life, who loves days in order to see good? Noon, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Shut your mouth, basically. Samet, turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Ain, the eyes of Yahweh are on the righteous, and his ears unto their cry. Pay, the face of Yahweh is against evildoers, to cut their remembrance off from the earth. Zadi, the righteous cried out, and Yahweh heard, and delivered them out of all their distresses. Kaf, Yahweh is near to the brokenhearted, and saves those whose spirit is crushed. Resh, many are the evils of the righteous. Many are the evils of the righteous, but Yahweh delivers him out of them all. Shin, he is guarding all his bones. Not one of them is broken. And the final letter, Tav. Evil does slay the wrong, and those who hate the righteous are guilty. Yahweh redeems the lives of his servants, and none of those taking refuge in him are guilty. Hallelujah. Now, I won't even begin to touch most of it. I will simply tell you, because it would take up way more time than I plan to use for this, because I like to keep these brief. But I will tell you, I implore you, please just do it. You can just do a quick search on Google. Start looking up the Aleph Bet. Look at how it applies to the text. Look at, and there's all sorts of chapters and verses, places it ties into. And what you'll see is, especially with Psalm 34 and other Psalms, because there's others, where the Aleph Bet is used as the beginning of each and every stanza of the word of that verse. And that word, that Aleph and Tav and all that, those words, you'll see them reflected in that sentence. It's there somewhere, but you gotta really study it. And it's a beautiful thing. The Hebraic language is a beautiful thing. I appreciate this walk. I really appreciate how the Most High Yah is opening his word to me, helping me to understand things that for years I had struggles with. I was taught, because I was raised Baptist and I later on became apostolic. I was taught in both places that the Most High was this mysterious being that was hard to understand and beyond knowing. And I guess he would be hard to understand and beyond knowing if I didn't read his word. Because his word is his instruction. He gave us his Torah, he gave us his Tanakh, because he wanted us to understand him. There's a pattern and a wisdom to everything he does. And he doesn't hide these things from his children. Sure, there are things about him that we have to learn through experience, but some things are plainly written. And it's this that we bases all of our relationship with him on this word, so that we can grow into a place where he can show us the deeper mysteries. So that's what I have for today. I appreciate your time with me. Please tune back in to the Midrash channel. Share these videos with people, man. They can benefit from them. And I pray this has been a benefit to you. And I wish you well today. I hope all is going well for you and your family and all your loved ones. Until next time, shalom.